Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Somewhere Between. A fantastic episode. So much crazy goodness went down in this episode, but obviously we're going to break things down bit by bit. First of all, we got to bring up what Nico did. I thought like Nico was all about turning that, giving the rings to the senator and everything, be like, hey, this proves my brother's innocence and stuff like that. But ultimately he backed down because he saw Logan, the senator's son, or the governor is what I meant to be saying. The governor's son with his daughter, and he's like, oh yeah, Nico Jackson, do you have any kids? And he's like, oh, I have a niece. And then he's like, I have an 8-year-old. The moment he said that, I was like, oh, because it's like almost like he's considering Serena his, and just like, and he thinks back to all the times they spent together and stuff like that, and he can't do it. He's like, nope, I can't. And he tried to make the deal. He tries to make a compromise where he hides the real jewelry and tries to get Serena. The guy shows up, but backup came too, and just Nico kind of got his ass beat bad. Serena couldn't take the chance that he'd get killed, so she came out. I was like, man. And this whole circumstances, all that puts Tom in a compromising position, because it's like, okay, Tom, we've settled it. Now you get the jewelry back. We'll remove your wife and Nico from the situation because they've been too much of a hassle. So now Tom has to decide between his wife or his daughter. Either he can have his daughter, and mourn the life of his wife, or he could mourn the life of his daughter with the wife that basically put them in this position in the first place. That basically this is all happening because of her, even though it ultimately is all Tom's fault. But they even try to spice it up and be like, oh yeah, we saw Nico and Laura getting in a hotel together, even though they haven't seen each other until Nico got the crap beat out of him. And he's like, it wasn't until they started, when she set up the meet up at Nico's place, that was the first time they're meeting this episode. But Tom, probably being in the mindset he was, probably didn't think too much of it, which is like, I think that was just a little bit more icing on top, obviously, but still, it's like, come on, could you really blame her? Considering the fact is you've been having you had an affair with her best friend and everything. So I was like, but nevertheless, what I didn't see coming though was Tom getting killed. That headshot. I was like, wait, are they? And the guy said something to him, and pow, shoots him. I was like, what? Caught me off guard. Like, I knew this was ultimately going to end with Laura and Nico being a thing, whatever, but it's like, I didn't expect him to be killed. I was like, nah, Tom's going to get arrested or something like that. Ultimately, maybe he turns evidence against the people behind this and everything, but I was not expecting him to die. Big changes in the whole situation, and it kind of shakes Laura because of my husband just got shot. My husband's dead. And it's like the father of my daughter is going, because they start thinking about it too. It's like, she's like, all we've done is mess things up. We've made things worse and worse. And to be fair, the one who made things worse and worse was Tom. Because we ultimately find out what this was all about. Tom blackmail, who we end up finding out, Colleen, the governor's wife. She's the one that was behind all of this. Granted, we don't know if the governor's behind it or not. It seems like right now everything's orchestrated by his wife. But I was like, oh, because it turns out that the kidnapper, the ghost, Kyle, is not their biological son. He's there, probably adopted someone to be the best way. He broke into their house when he was younger because he lost his parents and he was just kind of on his own, but they brought him in. Because ultimately it turns out the real killer this entire time was Logan. I kind of had a feeling was it Kyle? I was like, why did he kill Susanna? What is this all about? Like, why did he kill Susanna? I was like, was it an accident? Because he was in the military. It's like, did he have a PTSD moment or something? It was an accident. But then as the episode went on, I was like, it doesn't seem like it's him, especially when the camera gets revealed, because it's like the camera that Laura accidentally broke at the beginning of the series, that same camera had the evidence, and it showed Logan killing Susanna, and the reason why Danny thought it was him is because he was wearing Danny's jacket. And it's like, oh, dude. So that begs the question, why did he do it? Maybe he would, because now that I think about it, it makes a lot more sense now, too. I was thinking, well, why would he do that? Was it he tried to make advances on her, but she turned him down? Because that's why I was thinking maybe it was Kyle, because Kyle started talking about that, he stuttered or something. I was like, oh, was that what that was all about? It's like, no, because we ended up finding out Logan was the one that was taking the picture of the main group, Jesse, Kyle, Susanna, and the two brothers. There was also the guy behind the camera, and that was Logan. So he was part of that group too, because you even see at the end of the episode, he has the same tattoo, but it's kind of weathered. He probably was trying to get it erased or whatever. So most likely he spent time with Susanna, but the fact is that she was with Nico, and he probably was like, oh man, you and Nico are fighting, probably made a move on her, and she probably turned him down and was like, no, I can't do this, and that's why he killed her, because he rejected her. But then like, what does this have to do with Debray too? Like, because remembering, like, he's connected in all this too, like all those murders and stuff like that. Was like Debray put in this position to like cover up Logan's murders, even though it was Kyle who's supposed, like, because Kyle is the cleaner up of the family, because he was even telling Serena the story, like that, because that's why I was like, something's not right about this, because I knew like Serena dying had to be an accident, because there's no way that Kyle would do it just the way he is. Like, he's very like kind and sweet to her, so it's like he's not the killer in this group. I mean, he's done stuff, sure, I mean, as we know, he has killed people, but it's all been for the purposes of protecting his brother, because he ultimately, it's like Logan is his brother, but also it's because his parents brought him in, so he feels, I guess, indebted to. I don't know whether his family made him feel like he had to be indebted to them for them taking him off the streets, like, oh, like, you know, almost like an Aladdin story of like the street rat or something like that. I don't know whether he felt indebted to them or maybe they made him feel that way, but he's doing all this because of that. I mean, granted, to be fair, to our knowledge, it seems like, I mean, not unless those other murders were by him and not Debray. No, they were definitely Debray, but I mean, like, because weren't the other murders that Danny was charged with? Like, there was like 2 other murders he was charged with. So was that Kyle as well, to throw it off of Logan? Or did Logan commit those as well? I mean, because we also found out, like, you know, Jesse was in fact murdered. No surprise there. It turns out what Tom told about that story about Jesse dropping off the scarf really did happen. But the moment he got the scarf from Jesse, and he, you know, it's like, oh, the governor wouldn't have been able to give him the position he wanted to, just because he owed so many other people favors. So he blackmailed his way to the top of the list. So ultimately, Tom is the one to blame for all of this. It's like Laura and them, because that's the question. Like, it brings out that question: what happened in the original timeline? I'm so curious. Like, you know, and because there was like a 3-month period after Serena died, so, which we also saw the safety pin. The safety pin is from Colleen, which is like, how did it go from Colleen to Serena? Because it must mean that she was there when Serena drowned for it to be on her. But I was immediately thinking it's going to be Logan, because Logan's looking at the computer, because he's flipping out, because it's like Serena's the only like leverage they have of keeping all this evidence away. They got the rings, but now they still got to worry about Nico and Laura, which that was a badass moment in the at that place with Jenny, where it's like gunfire's going down, the grenades coming in through the window. Nico grabs it, tosses his bag out, and kills the 2 douchebags that's been following in this episode. I guess you could almost say fate kind of got that dude back, because he was the one that killed Tom. Plus, they've been like the most like familiar like faces that's kind of been like after Nico and Laura this entire time. But man, but sadly Jenny got shot, which is like, obviously, like, this episode was a big episode for her, being like, oh wow, you were right, I thought you were. He's like, oh, you didn't believe me before? She's like, no, of course not, but now I do, because everything you said is coming true. You could definitely, I was worried for her, because the moment they pulled out the card that said Jenny, I was like, oh man, they're gonna find Jenny and she's gonna be threatening her, they're gonna kill her. And it's like, okay, she's shot, sure, but I'm sure of it, she's gonna be okay. She's in a position, she's in a hospital, it's not gonna be easy for them to get her, so I think she's good. Like, the main 2 people behind it, like, that were coming after them, are dealt with now. So, but oh dude, so Jenny's good. Like I said, so far the only main casualty is Tom. Was not expecting that, which I kind of feel bad, because that's the actor is J.R. Bourne, who is, Papa Argent from Teen Wolf. So I feel a little sad for that, but it's like, just did not see him dying coming. That caught me completely off guard. I mean, and I love it, because everything is filling in. Like, obviously, like I said, we still don't know the reason why Logan did it, but I can only assume it was that. Like, Susanna turned him down, because he always had feelings for her. But the fact of the matter is, no matter what was happening between her and Nico, it didn't change the fact is, like, nothing could happen between them. Most likely, maybe because Logan was in a relationship at that time. I mean, he has a daughter now, too, so that's going to make this whole situation really awkward when he gets arrested, most likely next episode, so. Another big thing in this episode was that elevator scene where it's like they're panicking. Obviously, they're figuring things out, but they're panicking. It's like those guys are coming, and Nico's like, "Oh my god, who knows? Maybe if we get shot again, we'll get another redo." And he's like, "You know what I do? The moment I get a chance, I kind of track you down and tell you how much of an amazing lady and how stubborn but awesome you are and everything." It's like, oh, that's such a sweet moment and everything. And then like he pulls out the thing he got her, and she's like, it's copper, so I'm allergic to it." And he's like, "Oh yeah," and he uses it to start the elevator, and then they're going up, and he's like, yeah, this almost like, yeah, I wasn't actually expected to still be alive, so it's a little awkward, but they hold hands. I'm like, yeah. I mean, and then ultimately the question came is like, what do I tell Serena about her dad? It's like, well, ultimately, he died doing everything he could for her sake. Like, that's not 100% a lie. Granted, all this situation started because of him, which is like, all those times you get pissed at Laura for all, like, it's like, oh, because you did it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're literally the reason. I even said it last episode, he's literally the reason this is all happening, and he has the audacity to be pissed at her because she's the one that made everything unravel. It's like, no, it seems like Colleen, like, I mean, as we know, Colleen was still going to go through with this no matter what because of the original timeline. That was even without Laura interfering, simply because you threatened her family, so she's going to come at you full force. So you see how much you care about your daughter? Well, she cares about her son that much too. Which, like I said, going back to it, I don't know if the governor's involved or not. I feel like he would have to know. Like, I was 100% sure. I knew the dude, his name's Richard. I knew he was 100% behind it. Didn't expect there to be other people behind this too. So that's what this ultimately comes down to. Like, it is ultimately about, like, this whole big cover up was about protecting family. That was the sole reason for this whole endeavor. It wasn't. Because I was wondering why this whole, like, Danny situation, too. And, like, why they're pushing up Danny's execution because he's a piece of the puzzle. But it's like, why didn't they try and kill him sooner? And Nico's like, yeah, they tried. Like, his first year, he got attacked, like, 3 times. But they put him in special security. Essentially, I guess, like, he's in special lockup, so it's not easy to get to him. So that's why they've waited so long. So they're just going to let things kind of play out the way they need it to. But the moment Tom brought up the whole blackmail situation, it's like, oh, bump that. We're taking Serena. Danny's going to get executed. Oh, we can. So that must mean, too, that she. Hence, because that's why she was a little suspicious to me, was because I felt like, because she was the one pushing for Danny's, like, execution. But she had that moment with Grace where she's like, oh yeah, here, like, I don't know, which makes that moment even more messed up in retrospect, because it's like, oh yeah, here's all this evidence that won't do anything for you because I want to make sure your son dies. Like legitimately, when you think back to that scene, like, wasn't that back in like it was definitely in the first episode. So it's like, dude, it definitely seemed like she was, and now it goes back, it makes more sense too, because all 3 of them were pushing for this. Richard, Colleen, and Logan were all pushing for, like, that, like, oh, you need to stick right with your guns, Dad. So that's why I'm like, he doesn't know. He's completely oblivious to this whole situation, which is going to make the next episode be that much crazier when it ultimately comes out about everything. Like I said, I'm curious to see what goes down. And because, like I said, like, I don't think, because Kyle's not going to be all for this. I think ultimately when it comes down to it, it might actually be him who ends up putting Logan down, because he's not going to let Logan hurt Serena. Because, like, yes, Kyle's done some things, but hurting a little girl, it's not his, it's not possible for him. So, like, even at this point in time, taking care of her, feeding her, is like, oh yeah, you want some cookies? It's like, oh, you couldn't finish the hunger strike. Like, even showing her how to defend herself, it's like, there's compassion there. Like I said, so he's not completely an evil person. He's just a brother trying to do the right thing for his brother, which I guess ultimately might be where we might go up in the next episode. I don't know. Next week is, in fact, the finale, dude. I cannot wait to see what goes down. It's going to be a crazy, crazy episode. Like I said, the time is running out. Danny's execution is happening. Not happening, but I mean, it's getting closer and closer. Grace is trying to go see him, but she's not in the real best condition to do that. They have the evidence because they have the camera, the photo showing that, it wasn't Danny, that it was someone else. I guess that's even more so what Danny, like, because he captured that, but he didn't, like, because he thought it was Nico who did it, he like that's why he probably never said anything about it. So, because that was a question I kept wondering, is like, why did he think it was Nico? Because he saw the jacket. I figured it had to be someone that he thought looked exactly like. That's why I was thinking, like, was it really Tom or something like that? But it turns out, nevertheless, man, we actually look at that. That group is mad messed up, dude. That's kind of another thing too. It must have been Kyle who did it. Now that I'm thinking in retrospect, Kyle must be the one that it wasn't the other dudes. It was most likely Kyle that ended up killing Jesse, because Kyle was talking about how much of a good guy Jesse was, because Kyle used to have to stutter and everything, as I brought up earlier, but then Jesse was like, sing on this song a little bit, harmonize with it, and then it kind of helped get rid of stutter and everything. But then, it's like, oh yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I knew Jesse was a good guy. It's like, yeah, he was, until he wasn't. And it's like, what does that mean? I was thinking like, oh, did Jesse do something shady? And I'm like, because Jesse, well, I don't know, because was that before or after he found out about the scarf? Either way, it's like, because he probably most likely said that because of the whole thing about Jesse turning over the scarf. I could have sworn that he found that out afterwards. So was he referencing something else? Either way, I think that was what he was referencing. If that happened afterwards, then like the fact is, it's like we were a tight knit group and you betrayed us. Like. And maybe Jesse kept his mouth shut this entire time about knowing, because he had the scarf and everything. So maybe that's ultimately what he meant. Or maybe it was ultimately Jesse who helped Logan like cover up the evidence. So maybe that's why he was like, oh yeah, Jesse actually helped Logan cover this whole thing up. So, but then his conscience ate away at him because of it. Like maybe he was there when Logan attacked Susanna, and that was just kind of like, oh wow, okay, and he kept the scarf or something like that, or maybe he was part of the attack, maybe he helped end up killing Susanna. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, next week is the finale, so hopefully, not hopefully, we'll definitely be getting answers to everything. We already pretty much got like 90% of it right there. We just got to get that last little push in the next episode to fully understand and see how everything plays out. Because as I was constantly looking at the screen, trying to avoid looking too much at the episode, but it's like one final fight with Faye. For one to live, one must die. So we will see how this plays out, because we have 2 lives on lock here. So ultimately, Tom died, so maybe that means like now that Tom's dead, that at least saves one person's life. So maybe Serena's life is saved, but maybe if Logan dies, maybe that means also saving Danny's life. That's where my mind is, because it was said like a life will have to be sacrificed, meaning they're probably going to set something up where it's like either Nico or Laura might possibly be in a position to die. I don't know. I'm so eager to see how this all plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.